Some breaking news, Mary. While you were reporting in, we heard Senator Murkowski vote no to this cloture vote, saying that she does not believe this should move forward to the next vote. And of course, she's been one of those key senators who we did not know which way she would go. Of course, she's a senator from Alaska, and it had been reported that victims of sexual assault had been in her office yesterday. She didn't publicize it, but that they were there. And as we know, senators on Capitol Hill have been receiving many calls since the testimony of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford last week. Again, Murkowski meeting with some of those victims in the last 24 hours, it's been reported, and this morning voting no on this cloture vote. And if you recall, it was Senator Murkowski who said before the testimony last week from both Brett Kavanaugh and from Dr. Ford that, quote, "We are now in a place where it's not about whether or not Judge Kavanaugh is qualified. It's about whether or not a woman who has been a victim at some point in her life is to be believed." And Mary, this is significant. Senator Murkowski, a no this morning.
It is significant, and there have been signs, as you mentioned, that she might be making this vote. She has been under tremendous pressure from her constituents. We've been seeing protesters camped out nearly nonstop, it seems, outside of her office here on the Hill. And it's something really, as you mentioned, that's been different about this debate that we've seen here on the Hill. The level of interaction between protesters and these key undecided votes, these key swing votes, has been really something to watch, something tremendous. We've seen protesters not just here, on the streets outside of Washington, but actually engaging senators directly, taking their case to their representatives, either urging them to support or to say or to vote against Judge Kavanaugh. But Lisa Murkowski under tremendous pressure, like so many others, and now we know that she is voting no today to advance this debate.
Just help viewers at home, Mary, understand how this works. Obviously, these are the rules of the Senate playing out in front of America today, millions watching, because a no vote this morning on this cloture vote does not necessarily mean a no vote on the final vote. So talk us through this. Senator Murkowski voting no this morning, Senator Collins voting yes, but then she'll speak on the Senate floor later today about her final vote.
Yeah, this is a procedural vote, essentially to advance Judge Kavanaugh's nomination and to end the debate. How senators vote today does not necessarily indicate how they will vote on final passage. Now, if this vote to invoke cloture goes through, then it means that they will likely vote on final passage sometime tomorrow afternoon. But you mentioned Susan Collins. We know that she is a yes now to this vote, but that means she could still technically vote no tomorrow, although that does seem like it would be unlikely given some of the signs that we have seen coming from her. Susan Collins yesterday coming out after viewing that FBI report, saying that she thought it was a thorough investigation, but it will be interesting to see what she has to say later this afternoon, David.
All right.
And Wyden. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. Lee, aye. Ms. Hassan, no.
As we listen in here, now polling some of the Democratic senators, this is not typical, the procedure that's underway here this morning, so we're trying to keep close watch on what it is we're witnessing. We do know that the Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who I mentioned, was one of the undecideds going into this morning, voting yes to this cloture vote, which again simply means that he's voting yes, that we move on to the next step, to a final vote that could come as early as tomorrow. There's a lot of pressure on Senator Manchin. He comes from West Virginia, where President Trump won handily in the 2016 election. Manchin, though, is a Democrat and has been deliberating, and as Mary reported here this morning, had been in the SCIF, that secure room
Mr. Schumer,
where the findings of that FBI investigation are under lock and key. He said he was undecided and that he wanted to go look at the findings of that report again before heading into this room to vote.
Mr. Donnelly.
Our veteran journalist, Cokie Roberts, watching this unfold this morning. And Cokie, this is slightly different from what we normally see.
David, normally when senators take a vote, they're wandering on and off the floor, they're talking to each other, there are only 3 or 4 on the floor at the same time. Here they're sitting in their seats, listening, serious, calm, standing to vote. This is a very, very serious proceeding, and they know it, and that's why they're behaving in this fashion. They're all there, and they're taking this quite seriously. Normally, I have to tell you, with the cloture vote, this is the vote to end debate, that if you vote yes on cloture, it means taking it to the next step. It usually also does mean you're going to vote for the bill or the nominee or whatever. If you vote no on cloture, you're saying, I don't even want to take it to the next step. So it's very, very unlikely that you would then vote for the nominee. So the fact that Lisa Murkowski has voted no is highly significant. The fact that Joe Manchin and Susan Collins have voted yes is probably also quite significant, but not quite as significant.
Well, we do believe that the Republicans have the 50 votes they were looking for cloture. But as Koki just mentioned, sometimes this initial vote for cloture is an indicator of what's to come. And so for Lisa Murkowski, Koki, this was significant that she was a no vote this morning, and from Joe Manchin, a yes.
Mr. Reed.
He could possibly be one of the senators who helps bring Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court.
The senator. He could be the senator who does that. He's in a very, very tough re-election race right now. Lisa Murkowski is not up this year, but you know she knows how to work Alaska. She lost her primary the last time she ran, and then ran as a write-in candidate. So she's not as fearful of the Republican base as some of the others are. Susan Collins, I'm told that if she votes against Kavanaugh, that she's unlikely to ever be nominated again by the Republican Party in the state of Maine. So they've all got their own calculations to worry about, not just in terms of self-preservation, but in terms of what they think they can do for their states in the Senate.
John Carl watching with us this morning, our senior White House correspondent. And John, what are we to read into Senator Susan Collins revealing that she would vote yes this morning to cloture, but that she would appear later on this afternoon and deliver a speech about whatever it is her final decision will be?
I think it's nearly impossible to imagine that Susan Collins would vote yes on this, the critical vote, and then change her mind or vote differently on the final vote. She has her big speech at 3 o'clock. The most immediate impact of her saying that she is not announcing yet how she will vote on the final vote, I think, is a way to make sure that there is a little bit of drama left and there's a lot of attention, and we will all be watching her speech. I'm sure she has a lot to say, but I completely agree with what Mary Bruce has said about all of Collins' comments and now this vote. They all point in the direction of her voting yes on the final confirmation. I think what we have seen here, David, is we have seen that Brett Kavanaugh will be a Supreme Court justice.
John Carl watching this morning. And again, that key and crucial vote, as Koki was saying, Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia. Of course, it's not his final vote, but he did vote yes this morning to end the debate into whether or not Brett Kavanaugh should be appointed to the court. And as John Carl just said, some very strong indicators this morning that it looks like Brett Kavanaugh will be the next Supreme Court justice. If that does happen, that swing seat on the Supreme Court will shift that court to a more conservative leaning for a generation. A monumental move and an historic moment. We're watching the first round of this, though, play out now. And of course, it's no guarantee of what could come as early as tomorrow, but some very strong indicators that what we're witnessing this morning is very positive for both Brett Kavanaugh and for President Trump and the White House, which is watching this very closely. I do want to bring in Terry Moran, who has covered the Supreme Court for years for us here at ABC. And Terry, it wasn't lost on you that it is very rare. Perhaps we haven't seen this in our lifetime when a retired Supreme Court justice weighs in on the eve of this cloture vote. Retired Justice John Paul Stevens at an event that had been planned for some time. It's not as though he planned to say this on the eve of this vote. But he did reveal that he changed his views for reasons that had no relationship to Brett Kavanaugh's intellectual ability.
Harper.
But he did reveal in the last 24 hours that, quote, I feel his performance in the hearings ultimately changed my mind and disqualified him for the Supreme Court.
That was an
Carper,
extraordinary rebuke, David. John Paul Stevens, the Associate Justice, long time appointed by President Ford, a lifelong Republican, voted liberal, but was seen on this court by all of the other members as very cordial, very correct in the way he approached Justice's duties. And for him to come forward on Brett Kavanaugh in particular, a judge, an appellate court judge here in Washington, known to these justices. They socialized with him, a rising star for a generation among conservative lawyers.
Are there any
for him to
senators
come
in the
out
chamber
and
who
say
wish to change
his
their vote?
performance at the hearing changed my mind, and to say it publicly,
As a reminder
that
to
was a
our
rebuke.
guests in the galleries, expressions of approval or disapproval are not permitted in the Senate galleries. On this vote, the yeas are 51, the noes are 49. The motion is agreed to.
And so there you have it. The votes are there to invoke cloture. We just heard the gavel there moments ago. They have now voted to end debate into nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh. This now sets things in motion for an historic vote as early as tomorrow.
Hello, I'm Mark Brown. Click the ABC7 logo to subscribe to our Eyewitness News YouTube channel.